Now it's saying it. Okay, I had a thing about Daniel up here and now I can't find it. This is the day for so many things going wrong.
I'm happy to introduce myself too.
Okay, well, Daniel is on the staff of the Ecology Center in Berkeley, and he has grew up in Berkeley. And I'll let him tell you about his job description and his technical qualifications. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Carol. Should I go ahead and share my screen or should I hold off a little longer?
No, you can go right ahead.
All right. So my name is Daniel McChesney-Young. I am the Farmers Market Program Manager for the Ecology Center. So I oversee our 3 farmers markets that we operate in Berkeley, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. As far as job description, I like to say that the short version is I do everything from make speeches to city council to pick up dead rats and sort of everything in between. Fortunately, there are more dead rats than speeches to city council. As far as my technical qualifications, I do have a little disclaimer coming up. I have a bachelor's degree in cultural geography from UC Berkeley, and I was a chef for 20 years. So I know a lot about food. However, I am not a chemical engineer. So if you want somebody who's going to talk to you about the pros and cons of the 900 or so pesticides which are allowed in conventional farming in the US and the 25 or so pesticides which are allowed in organic farming, I'm not the guy, but you probably don't want to spend your Monday night hearing about chemical engineering anyway. All right, so this is kind of a rough outline of what we want to talk about. Feel free to ask questions. We're a pretty small group. I don't know if I will see everybody's hand raised if you use the hand raised feature, but I think we can keep it pretty informal. So feel free to just jump in if there's something you want to mention. So introduction, and as I said, the disclaimer, which I started. I did want to talk about farmers markets since I'm a farmers market guy, and we are especially talking about these in relation to farmers markets, these organic rules and regulations and certifications. Talk about organic standards and organic certification, which are kind of different things. The Berkeley farmers markets, including the North Berkeley farmers market, which was up until a couple of years ago, an all organic market. And then I think what really prompted this talk was we've seen a lot of farmers who are giving up their organic certifications. So I can talk about the stories that I have heard from farmers. And then, is organic certification, after you hear everything I have to say, still important? And we can do some Q&A. So, as I said, the disclaimers, I know a lot about the Berkeley farmers markets. I've worked at them for 4 years, shopped with them longer, and if you want to talk about Berkeley farmers market policies, well, I'm the guy that writes the farmers market policies, so you're in the right place for that. I will say, this is me on a Monday night sharing both farmers market policies, but also some of my views. So just if you run into Martin Bork, our executive director, in the halls of 2530 San Pablo, there may be things that come up in the Q&A section which are personal opinion and not Ecology Center policy. That said, I do also want to just give a general pitch for the Ecology Center, though. I expect most of you are pretty familiar with it. We are a 56-year-old nonprofit based in Berkeley, founded in 1969 and incorporated in 1970. We ran the first in the nation curbside recycling program, and we now wear a lot of hats, including still doing curbside recycling, youth education, our retail store. We host the California Alliance of Farmers Markets. We run the Berkeley Farmers Markets, and we run the Market Match program for the state of the whole state. So roughly 290 farmers markets, which offer a match for extra fresh fruits and vegetables for shoppers shopping with CalFresh, formerly known as food stamps. We give them extra funds to buy fresh fruits and veggies. So it's a lot, and I just do want to give that pitch for the organization as a whole, because now I'm going to talk about farmers markets. Farmers markets, as we know them, didn't exist really until the late 70s. It used to be that it was highly regulated where and what and how produce could be sold. There was a cannery strike, and a lot of fruit went bad. A lot of peaches, which would have gone into cans, ended up rotting. Some of it rotting on the Capitol lawn. And one of the things that came out of that was Governor Jerry Brown, in his first time as governor, signed the Direct Marketing Act. So this allowed farmers to be exempt from a lot of the rules they had previously had about size standardization, labeling, weights, transportation, until the Direct Marketing Act. Basically, you could buy fruit at a grocery store or you could buy it at a farm, but farmers markets, as we know and love them now, were not allowed. So that's farmers markets. The USDA sets organic standards in the United States. So this started in 1990. I guess backing up a little bit, I feel like we've all heard the saying organic, it's what our grandparents knew. It used to be everything was organic. And then, of course, we found all these lovely chemicals which we could spray on our food, and they did various things, most of them bad. So in response to the Back to Land movement, more and more people getting excited about natural food, Congress eventually passed the Organic Foods Production Act in 1990, which was basically just an act saying we need to develop some national standards. In 1992, the National Organic Standards Board was formed to advise the USDA on what would be allowed and what would be prohibited in organic farming. In 1997, they issued their first proposed rule for organic standards, and then further developed in 2000, with the final implementation created in 2002. So if we think about the history of farmers markets, US organic standards are coming a lot later. So the USDA says what can and what cannot be called organic in the United States. Some of the things that are prohibited are synthetic fertilizers, sewage sludge, irradiation, and genetically engineered crops. For the most part, you can't use any synthetic substances. And of course, there are some natural substances like arsenic and strychnine. These are natural substances, but not necessarily things we want on our food. That said, there are synthetic pesticides which can be used in organic farming. So USDA organic does not necessarily mean no chemicals at all. But for the most part, fewer chemicals, often no chemicals at all. So USDA sets the standards. What is CCOF or Oregon Tilth? These are what we call third-party certifiers. So USDA sets the standards, but they are not doing inspections. There are currently, I just checked the list, a total of 72 organizations in the world which are certified by the USDA to certify farms. So CCOF is one of the biggest ones. Like I said, Oregon Tilth. There's a number of them, not all of them domestic. I'd say probably 75% of our farms at the Berkeley Farmers Market get their certification from CCOF. So they're the ones which are going out, taking soil samples, taking crop samples. They do come to the farmers market. They'll put gloves on and they'll take a clean bag and they'll take samples off the table and then they go back to the lab and test it. So they are very thorough. There are other certifications which farms might choose to use. I think one of the most interesting is the Real Organic Project. To be Real Organic certified, and we have 2 or 3 Real Organic producers, they look at soil health, they look at worker health, they look at how the staff are being treated, and that came about because they were really upset that you can actually be USDA certified organic and not grow in soil. You can be completely hydroponic. And that is not necessarily leading to sort of a better environment. So looking at it from an environmental standpoint, I like to say you can have good practices and not be certified organic. And being certified organic does not necessarily certify good practices. Another thing that the Real Organic folks shared with me is a lot of organic dairy. What they do is they work the cows really hard on the organic fields until they get sick, and then they pump them full of hormones and steroids and just move them over to the conventional fields. So again, it's not necessarily certifying good practices, it's just certifying, no pesticides, limited, or no herbicides, no pesticides, limited chemical inputs. Certified regenerative is another interesting one because there's actually kind of 4 competing regenerative certifications and standards. There hasn't really been one kind of solid front runner yet. So I think we haven't really established what regenerative means yet, because if we're going to call it something, we have to set a standard, and we haven't chosen a standard yet. Going back to Berkeley, the first Berkeley Farmers Market was started in 1981 at 5th and Delaware. That was not run by the Ecology Center. It was just run by actually CalPERG, ran the first one, ran off and on for 5 years, organized by different volunteer groups. And eventually in 1987, the Ecology Center took it over and has been running it ever since. I always have to put the little asterisk when I say we run all the farmers markets in Berkeley, because there's the Monday farmers market at Kaiser in West Berkeley now, which is not us. We have always prioritized sustainability. And again, whether all organic produce is sustainable can be a little tricky, but it's certainly a good start. Our Thursday market is 21 years old this year. Founded with the help of Alice Waters, who of course is a big organic proponent. 21 years, I should say, on North Shattuck. It was bounced around a number of locations in West Berkeley before landing in North Shattuck. And that was our all organic market. When it started, before my time, again, this was 21 years ago, I believe it was all organic, including all of the prepared food. Our current policies for prepared food are that the ingredients need to be at least 80% organic or purchased at the farmer's market. So that was 100% organic for both produce and for prepared food. By the time I came around 4 years ago, we had gone to the standard 80% for organic ingredients, and then it was still 100% organic produce. But we were starting to see this trend of farms were voluntarily giving up their organic certifications. They weren't changing their practices as far as we knew, but for a number of reasons, which we'll kind of get into in the next slide, they didn't want to be organic farms anymore. The other thing that really struck home for me, I had a customer come up to me and they said, does anybody sell bitter melon? And I said, well, we have bitter melon at our Tuesday market and we have bitter melon at our Saturday market, but we don't have bitter melon at our Thursday market because we're all certified organic, and I'm not aware, none of our farmers who grow bitter melon are certified organic. And it really kind of made me think about, you know, who is this rule for, and who is this rule keeping out, both for vendors and for customers. It seems like there were a lot of, especially South and Southeast Asian farms who have organic practices. They've been growing the same way for generations, but they're not certifying for one reason or another. So, what are those reasons? I think for the most part, it's money and paperwork. I tried to get some figures from our farms. I feel like the farms never really want to talk about dollar amounts. It also depends on acreage and certifying organization. But what one of our larger farms told me, and this is large, meaning, I don't know, 150 acres, is their organic certification is the annual salary for 2 full-time employees. That's how much they pay to be certified organic. So that's a significant chunk of change. I think the cost goes up every year, and just the paperwork burden goes up every year. That's what they tell me, is every year it's more and more forms that they have to fill out. I've also had farmers just tell me, you know what? I don't need anybody to tell me how to grow my crops. CCOF is theoretically farmers certifying other farmers. It's California Organic Farmers, but ultimately organic has become big business. It's kind of great that you can get organic products at Walmart now, but it's definitely watering down the original philosophy of sort of real, whole, slow food that you can get all this kind of processed, plastic, imported organic produce. So I've also had farmers say, well, we just don't want to seem kind of snobby. Like we want produce for the people. Obviously, that cost is going to be passed on to the consumers in one way or another. So this is what I've heard of the farmers who have voluntarily given up their certifications. I've also had farms, at least one farm, which had a small flood. A levee broke, flood got on to less than 10% of his cropland, and they took his certification away because of that, because they said, well, we don't know, what's been in that water. He is Mexican. English is not his first language. He doesn't have a lot of money and resources. And I expect if he was, one of our college educated white farmers, he probably would have been able to fight it. But he just isn't organic anymore. So my job is to support farmers. And I felt like requiring organic certification maybe wasn't the best way for us to support farmers and to make our farmers markets feel like a place that was welcoming to everyone. That's been a big thing for us. We want farmers markets to feel like they are for everyone. And so, getting those bitter melons out at the North Shattuck market, which hasn't happened yet, but I'm hoping is going to happen one of these days. Making sure that there are cheaper options. Again, the organic certification is expensive, and one way or another, that cost is going to be passed on to the consumer. So yeah, those are kind of the decisions that went into opening up the North Shattuck Farmers Market to non-certified producers. That said, talking about my personal belief, is organic certification still important? Of course. I think we should all be eating organic food. Nobody wants food that's sprayed with chemicals. And I do encourage and I try to support our farmers who want to make that transition to certified organic, because even if I go out to the farms, as I said, I'm not a chemical engineer. I don't know how to do those soil tests. So I do think it's really important to have these certification processes. I trust my farmers when I talk to them about their growing processes. And I do think that shopping at farmers markets is a really great way to know what you're eating, what you're putting in your body. But ultimately, you're kind of just taking their word for it. So it is nice to have somebody who's going out there who's saying, yes, I know that this is no spray, no chemical fertilizer, all of those important things. But it can't be the be all and end all. The soil health, the worker health, there's a lot of those things that organic certification doesn't really look closely at, which is why you want to hopefully get to know your farmer. This is Tim Mueller. He's the owner now of River Dog Farms, one of our important farms. Great guy. So my call to action to you that I'll leave you with is, support these farms, support the organic farms, and If you see something that looks good and they're not certified organic, go talk to them. Like, get to know them, get to know your growers, ask them about their processes, and yeah, support these small farmers. Farmers markets, when you spend $1 at a farmer's market, the farmer gets roughly 90 cents of that dollar. And when you spend $1, just on average in the US, I think the farmer gets about 16 cents of that dollar. So that's why farmers markets are a really good way to support these small organic and non-certified organic farms. And I will leave our locations and hours as we go into the Q&A section.
Okay, I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
One thing, this is not related to what you just talked about, but you'll be interested in it. Our League of Women Voters, Berkeley, Albany, and Emeryville, but I think it was just Berkeley at that time before we merged with Albany and Emeryville, did a pilot study and that did curbside pickup in Berkeley before the establishment of the farmers market. And they did it in two sections, I believe, of Berkeley, one closer to the hills and one in the west flatlands. And it was Gail Shickley's mother-in-law. She was my predecessor on this environmental concerns committee. And she is the one, along with Jane Bergen, and we're getting real old now. And they had applied to the government, got some money, and did this pilot test. And that preceded the Ecology Center and curbside pickup in Berkeley. And we have it documented somewhere in our records if you're interested in more information about details of that. But you're running these three different farmers markets. How do you find out the practices of the farmers? What are the criteria for, if they're not organic, how do you decide who can sell here and verify it in any way, their practices?
Well, so first, one of the cool things about farmers and farmers markets in California, which is pretty unique in the country, there's a few other states that do this, is we have something called certified producers and certified producers certificates. So we will, we need to first off know that they grew it themselves before we can talk about practices. So in California, it's actually the California Department of Food and Agriculture and the local county level agriculture departments that certify the producers, and they have a certificate which lists everything that they grow, where it's grown, and the season in which it's grown. And that's a big part of California farmers markets. You'll see they all have these signs that say, we grow what we sell. And that's not just kind of a fun catchphrase. That is a contract with the consumer, that they did actually grow those strawberries. They didn't just go get them at Costco and dump them out onto a table. So then for looking at the standards, we have not been able to do as many farm visits as we would like, especially post-COVID. We're kind of just getting back into that. There is a lot of, there's a close-knit farmer community. So one of the things we'll do is we'll talk to the farmers who we've had for 20, 30 years, and ask them about new farms which are applying, because a lot of times it's their neighbors. We do ask them about their growing process. There is, as I said, a little bit of the honor system if there isn't an organic certification. We'll talk to other market managers who might have had them longer. Maybe they're a new farm for us, but maybe they've been at the AIM Farmers Market or the Urban Village or PCFMA for 10, 20 years, and they've been out to the farm and they know them better. So we don't have a real strict criteria of what we're looking for when we say we prioritize sustainability, because sustainability is such a broad concept. And then we're also looking at health of the market, and we want to make sure we have products which are interesting to the consumer and aren't competing too heavily with our existing vendors. So does that kind of answer your question?
Somewhat. What, if any, changes in farming practices and organic designation or any other thing that would affect it has changed due to climate change that you know of?
Well, I think that I'm not aware of any major changes to the organic rules or certifications. I do think that climate change is making farming just generally more difficult. The seasons are getting more volatile. Again, I talked about one of the farmers losing their certification due to flooding. We've had farms lose their entire crops due to unseasonable frost. So climate changes makes farming more difficult. It makes it more expensive, which in turn makes the organic certification, when you're looking at all of the difficulty in farming, all of the cost, maybe, when you have to cut something, you think about cutting that check to CCOF. Michael, I see you have your hand raised, and then Eric.
Unmute. Michael, unmute.
Oh, does that do it?
Yes.
Okay, great. I see a lot of the same stuff, with the legal profession, and certified or licensed lawyers. And one thing that the lawyers have been doing is trying to avoid a whole area of law called the public trust. And they would rather ignore that the whole thing happened. And there's all these ethical rules that have been, rules for a long time. And the basic thing is, just because you get a bunch of farmers in a location, is there anything that says that when you ask them about their practices, whether they're actually telling the truth or not? And basically, what lawyers have done is try to make it easier for people who pay for certification. That's the way they did it with taxis, with medallions and stuff like that. And they certified them. And so it's a way of sort of running the market. And sometimes nonprofit groups do the same thing, without saying they're doing it. And maybe this is a bigger problem than just like organic farming. Maybe it's a problem with just democratic governance. And, when elected leaders get elected, they're supposed to do jobs, and those jobs are actually a public trust. And, the public is able to say, well, why don't you just do your job? And essentially, these certification schemes make it less likely that farmers will do their jobs, and more likely that consumers will pay a higher price. And maybe there's something that would involve a discussion between both people who go to farmers markets and the farmers markets themselves, rather than just sort of something that says, okay, this is a farmer's market and the box is checked. It's just like the internet. And, basically Google got, ruled against as a monopoly for doing that kind of stuff. And maybe, I don't know, what do you think of the whole idea of a more public spirited discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. I guess if we're talking about sort of the farmers markets doing more, more of that trust building, and I guess what their certifiers are doing now, it just becomes a slippery slope to, well, we're just another third-party certification organization. I will share a story. One of our current vendors grows strawberries, both certified organic strawberries and non-certified organic strawberries. And the one of those rules around organic farming is your farm land has to have been untouched by chemicals for at least 3 years. And that's why sometimes you'll see the word transitional. They'll talk about transitional organic. That means that they've started using organic practices, but they haven't been doing it for long enough to be certified organic. And so they had 2 sets of strawberries. One was organic, one was not, both grown with the same practices. And somebody said, hey, are these all organic? And the person selling them was like, yeah, they're all organic, meaning, they're all grown with organic practices. And CCOF pulled their organic certification and fined them $20,000. So that's just talking about public trust. I do think these third-party certification organizations take it pretty seriously and are doing what they can to make sure that farmers aren't just, saying whatever they want about their product. That is something where we as market managers will pay attention to what they're saying, whether it matches up with their certifications. And then also, there are some things that some markets allow and that some farmers will do that we kind of discourage, saying like no spray, or yeah, that's a big one. You'll see a lot of farms where they'll just put, no spray apricots, and that is not what we would consider a best practice, because well, says who? Says you. Like, if you're going to be advertising it but not have anything to back it up, that's not necessarily a good practice. And I know I did just say, well, go get to know the farmers, talk to them, but I do feel like it's easy to put out a sign that says a lot without really conveying a lot of information. Eric, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, yeah, and I have a question, and it's in the same line uh, as Carol's um, uh, 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 Carol's question, and that is how many farmers have had their ability to come to farmers markets revoked? I mean, does it happen often that a farmer comes and you say, no, you can't come? And have you had farmers that are at the farmer's market and you say you can't come anymore?
I have not kicked out a farmer. We did recently have a farm, which we got an email from the ag department saying that certified producer certificate is actually not legitimate. I guess it seems like the investigation is still ongoing. I don't know all of the details, but it seemed like the farm changed hands and they found a sort of a fixer who was like, yeah, I'll deal with all the paperwork for you. And whether knowingly or unknowingly, they got some fraudulent paperwork in, so they are no longer at the farmer's market. So it does happen.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Ruby, go ahead. And you're muted though.
You're still muted, Ruby. We can't hear you, Ruby.
Okay,
Good.
okay. Um, you said something about 80% of is the designation or is the
Oh,
benchmark?
so when that was for prepared food at the Berkeley Farmers Market. So when a prepared food vendor comes to us and applies, the standard is that at least 80% of their ingredients should be certified organic or purchased at the farmers market. We have created an exemption process if for whatever reason, either because their product, maybe there are culturally significant ingredients where, like, to make what they make, they just can't find it at all, or it's just prohibitively expensive. I'm sure you can get certified organic teff, but I'm just going to use it as an example. They make Ethiopian food, and they need to make injera to make Ethiopian food, and they can't find it, or it's going to be 20 times as expensive, and nobody would ever pay that much for flatbread. So the way that exemption process works is if we, the farmers market staff, and on the farmers market team, we have myself and one other full-time employee, to 75% time employees. So they are essentially full-time, and then a handful of part-time employees. If we get this application and it's something we're really excited about, we're like, yeah, we think this would be a great fit for the farmers market, but they do not meet our standards, and they have requested an exemption. So if all of those things are the case, we will send their exemption request to our community advisory committee. And then if the community advisory committee does not object, or if there is not, I think it's like if 3 people on the community advisory committee object within 2 weeks, we'll say, okay, sorry, you know, you're not a good fit. But if they either support bringing them in or hold their tongues, then we would grant them an exemption.
I have another question. I, sorry, full disclosure, I don't usually go to farmers markets because, you know, schedule constraints and that sort of thing. So I frequent a market, which over the years I've been going there, I noticed that in the beginning, produce from Mexico or even Peru, particularly mangoes from Peru, which I like very much, were not designated as organic. But I've noticed in the recent years that that has appeared on these imported items. And you know, maybe I should just ask them, but do you have some idea whether those people really are complying with rules for organic certification?
Yeah, so of those 72 USDA third-party certifiers, there are a number of them outside of the US. So there are USDA organic certifications happening in other countries, and then there are also other countries and blocks of countries which have their own organic certification. And currently there are, I'm blanking on the word, you know, their certifications count. So if you are European Union organic, you can sell your product as organic in the United States. I couldn't say about your Peruvian mangoes. I will say, when we're talking about climate change, I have seen some of the first California grown mangoes. So, you know, before we all die in a wildfire or, you know, whatever climate change will bring, there are California grown mangoes now. So yeah, and you know, I think you have to, when we're talking about sustainability, look at it from a holistic approach. So okay, yeah, you've got this organic food, it's clean, there's no chemicals, you know, maybe it's super nutrient dense, but what's the carbon footprint if it came here on an airplane? You know, how is that affecting climate change? So that's one of the reasons where I might prioritize something local and conventionally grown versus something imported and organically grown. And of course, I could go on a tangent about people eating seasonally and people learning to cook. But I know Carol's gonna cut us off at 9, so I don't want to get too tangential.
We have time.
Anything else?
Ruby, do you have another question?
Well, doesn't nobody else have a question?
I have another one, but I've asked a lot so far. The current administration has done an enormous amount in terms of cutting government programs, undoing things, and sort of just taking a wrecking ball and creating a lot of chaos. How has farmers markets, organic farming et cetera been affected by, I haven't heard too much about it, but how has that been affected?
Yeah, I think it's a little too early to tell. One of the big things that we're talking about uh, at the Ecology Center are the changes to SNAP. So the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program um, puts a lot of food in people's mouths. And because we are doing market match, so at the Berkeley farmers markets, we do about $370,000 in supplemental nutritional assistance money last year. So between CalFresh and then Market Match, which doubles it up. So that's a lot of produce, a lot of money to our farmers. And as they reduce benefits and make benefits harder to get, that's something that we're concerned about. Market Match is a mix of state and federal funds. The Gus Schumacher Nutritional Incentive Program, which took me a while to be able to say quickly, GusNIP is the federal grant which funds Market Match, and they require that you have a matching grant. And we have always had the state of California be the match. And in January, Gavin Newsom, bless his heart, cut that money from the state budget. And if I had to cut $34 billion, I probably wouldn't be, I'd probably start hacking and slashing too. We did eventually get it put back into the budget. So we saved Market Match, and we should be good through the end of 2027. That said, the GusNIP grant they've taken down all of their grants off the website, so nobody can apply for anything. We're not sure. We're hoping it's going to come back. Maybe it'll have some anti-woke language in it, but in one form or another. But yeah, the changes to SNAP are going to be a big thing because there are a lot of consumers at farmers markets who are using those benefits and will be really affected by them. As far the farm bill, I think they're still working on it, so who knows what other last minute stuff they're gonna sneak in. Again, kind of getting off of my Ecology Center soapbox and onto my personal soapbox, seeing the Make America Healthy Again movement. It's so weird. It's such a weird time we're living in. And yeah, there are bits and pieces of it where I'm like, yeah, well, that seems great. And then the rest of it is just kind of so out there that it's hard to say, wait, we agree on anything?
Well, like one thing is whether something is a public asset or private equity.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, is healthy food a public asset, or is it considered private equity if you buy a producer?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think, yeah, I would say that good, clean, healthy food ought to be a human right. But of course, it seems like people will find ways to commodify a lot of human rights. And of course, I am in us the business of business ultimately, even though we are a nonprofit, I am out there, supporting capitalism by giving people a literal marketplace. And yeah, I guess it would be great if all the food was free.
No, I'm not saying free, but I am saying though that we've seen what happens when private equity buys healthcare facilities.
Yeah.
And we're actually seeing that when private equity is buying farming assets.
Yeah,
And
the number of farms, in the US shrinks by like 4,000 each year. It's been a pretty clean graph of fewer and fewer farms as the big farms eat the little ones. And the average age of a farmer in the US keeps creeping up. I think it's like 66 now, is the average age of a farmer in California. And a lot of the farmers that I talk to, I say, are your kids going to take over? And they say, probably not. So that's why, going back to my call to action, I think it's important to support these small farms, because if you're just buying, whatever is organic, and it's great. Again, I'm pro organic food, but just because it says organic on the label doesn't necessarily mean that it was grown sustainably or ethically. And I think that it's just good to think about where your food's coming from and make those decisions.
but what about older people moving out of the way for younger people? I know that David Brower said that, people asked him, well, what can we do about this growing inequality in intergenerational wealth? And he said, well, maybe we should just get out of the way, and he said, that's what I do. He said that at the Ecology Center, as a matter of fact. And yeah. Anyway, the whole idea of just getting out of the way rather than trying to control, from beyond the grave.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is one other, the trouble is I'm not really sure what this designation is, but at my market, there are organic, and then there's another category of especially fruits, which is, and I don't remember the term, but it sounds as though we're not organic, but we do something significant that
So maybe
reduces
just like pesticide free.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, is that how, you know, how should we take that? Or do you have some idea of what that really means?
I mean, it means that the farmer says they're pesticide free, which, if it's a farmer that I've spent a lot of time with, I would absolutely trust them. And if it's, just somebody I'd never met from who knows where, I might be a little more skeptical.
So there's no one who actually has their stuff chemically analyzed, or is it possible to do that so that they could claim that what they're offering you really doesn't have anything? I mean, say you ground it up and put it into a gas chromatograph or something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like the organic certifiers are doing that testing of the organic produce, and that's, one of the things that the organic farms are paying for with their organic certification is that testing. But as far as I'm aware, nobody's putting the time and resources into checking you know, those no pesticide statements. Because yeah, I'm not aware, like that's the purpose of the organic certification, is to state whether or not something really is what they say it is, and there's no, I'm not aware of there being, you know, any sort of major legislation around saying that you can't say no pesticides and having to mean it. Like, I guess there's sort of some truth in advertising laws, but nothing specific to that. I went to Berkeley Bowl today. I can't always get everything at the farmers markets, and I saw two different farmers market vendors also at Berkeley Bowl. So even the people who work at the farmers market and sell at the farmers market still shop at the grocery store sometimes.
Well, we have Berkeley Bowl in the Monterey Market. We're
Yeah, it's
fortunate.
stiff competition for the farmers markets here in Berkeley.
Can I ask you what kind of restaurants you worked at? What are your cooking specialties?
Yeah, until the pandemic, I was at a restaurant called A16 in Rockridge, which is Southern Italian food, fancy pizza. So I actually, one of the things that I like to work into every conversation eventually, and here we are, is that I competed in the Pizza Olympics in Naples, Italy. I came in middle of the pack, you know, I did pretty well for an American. So,
So,
yeah.
do we have any other questions?
I did put my email in the chat. So if you think of something, that burning question as soon as we sign off, feel free to email me. I'm usually at, you know, 1.5 of the 3 farmers markets. I'll usually work a full shift managing the markets once a week, and then stop by for half a market at one of the other ones. So I'm around out there in my high-vis yellow vest. I'm usually pretty easy to find.
Thank you very much,
I have
Daniel.
a question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
How can we support our local farmers market if, as Ruby said, it's difficult for us to get there during that time?
Yeah, that's a great question. A number of our farms do CSA boxes. That's community supported agriculture. So if you want to support the small farms, but you can't go to the farmers markets, a CSA box is a great way to do it. Tim Mueller of Riverdog Farms. Riverdog has a CSA box. Full Belly has a CSA box. Frog Hollow has a CSA box. Oya Organics has a CSA box, and these are all certified organic farms. And there are drop-off locations, including the Ecology Center on San Pablo. Full Belly Farms does a pickup there on Wednesdays, I believe. Maybe it's Thursday. It's got to be Thursday. So yeah, if it's not convenient, there are a lot of CSA boxes. Some of them deliver, many of them have multiple locations where you can pick up, perhaps in your neighborhood, various days of the week. So that's a great way to do it. There are other farmers markets besides the Berkeley farmers markets. Don't tell anybody you heard it from me. So if you want to go to a farmer's market, we have them, I think, 6 days a week in the East Bay. So 7 days a week if you're willing to travel a little further. So that's another way. And then there are, you know, of course, if you just want to support farmers markets, you can donate to people who are supporting the work. I'm not going to tell you you should donate to Ecology Center, though. If you do, you can put farmers market in the, you know, notes field. But there are a lot of great CAF, the Community Alliance of Family Farms, when we're talking about educating and supporting the next generation of farmers. CAF is a great organization. The Real Organic Project that I talked about, their certification is free. The organic certification is pretty expensive, and you do have to be regular organic certified to get Real Organic certified. But they're doing good work. Yeah, there's so many organizations that are doing good work. So if you want to just support the work without shopping at the farmers markets, you can always find those organizations which are doing the work on their own.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You.
I also want to put in one good plug that I saw on your website, which is, I think, the 27th of September. There's going to be some kind of a pizza thing, and you pay for that, and you become a member of the, you know, the Berkeley Ecology Center.
Yeah, it's Thursday, September 25th.
Oh.
I will be making the pizzas, so if you want to see,
Oh.
you know, what middle of the pack Olympic pizza tastes
Didn't
like.
know that.
Also, we'll be doing a farmers market tour, and you already know a lot of it, but you can meet some of the farmers, try some of that farm to pizza produce, drink some wine if that's your thing, and yeah, get an Ecology Center membership.
There's a meeting, Michael.
No, I like that. Pretty good for American standards.
Believe it or not, the all-around competition was actually won by somebody from Japan.
Whoa.
Yeah, I would say it was, you know, probably 70% Italians competing, 25% Japanese, and then, you know, 5% other, which I kind of fell into as an American.
It's great. It's in Naples?
Yeah.
Who puts it on?
The Associazione Verace Pizza Napoletana, the AVPN, yeah, Association of True Neapolitan Pizza.
Yeah, Verata. True. So, all right. Yeah, thanks.
And boy, Naples was in July. It was hot. Yeah, when your pizza dough is alive and finicky, and you know, that was the tricky part, was, you know, making it in 95-degree weather.
Thank you. We will
Thank you.
end now unless there are further questions. If there are, just blurt them out. It was very interesting, and we appreciate your time.
Of course. Thanks for spending your Monday evening hearing about farmers markets and organics.
And with your
Thank you.
permission, we'll put this up on our YouTube channel, and other people can watch it.
Great.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you all.